If you've ever been in that season of your life where intimacy feels like both a craving and a confrontation, then this video is for you. I talk about intimacy. I'm not just talking about sex. I'm talking about that quiet, terrifying act of allowing yourself to be seen, to heal the parts of you that flinch when someone tries to love you right, to surrender or even submit, not in weakness, but in this radical act of trust that you've never considered. And D'Angelo's Untitled, How Does It Feel? And James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room are mirror images of that same thing. One is shame and the other is sung in surrender. Both works kind of orbit around the same question. What does it mean to want deeply, physically, and vulnerably when the world has told you that that desire itself is a sin? And that same architecture lives in the Black church, where devotion and denial are often sharing the same pew. We're taught that to be holy is to be untouched. The desire of the devil's fingerprint on the flesh is a bad thing. So we praise with our hands held high, and we flinch when anyone reaches to touch them. And that's the thing. At that point, theology becomes performance art. You see, sanctified restraint is nothing but repression. Yet the very thing we fear, touch, intimacy, and longing, is what our spirit craves most. So in Giovanni's Room, Baldwin's narrator David is haunted by the body, his own and others. He wants love, but he has been taught to fear what it awakens in him, those urges. He says people can't happily invent their mooring posts, their lovers, and their friends any more than they can invent their parents. So he's trapped in this moral architecture of a world that sees his longing as deviant. Desire becomes confession, and pleasure becomes proof of guilt. And then there's D'Angelo. He doesn't apologize for his hunger. He inhabits it. He turns shame into a sort of sacrament when he asks, how does it feel? It's not rhetorical, it's spiritual. It's an invitation to inhabit your own body without flinching. And when people say that this video in itself should have guided some sort of awakening in you, this is what they mean. Baldwin and D'Angelo understand that sensuality isn't just about sex. It is about the struggle to exist unapologetically. In Baldwin's world, to be seen is to risk annihilation. In D'Angelo's, to be seen is to risk transcendence. And both men stand on that edge of revelation and ruin. As a side note, you also see this same ache in Madeline Miller's The Song of Achilles. Achilles and Patroclus live suspended between love and expectation, and both of them are kind of want this tenderness, but they can't do it. Their desire exists in the glory, things that really don't define them. I hope that makes sense. It's another kind of confinement, like the beginning of Giovanni's Room. It's not a cell, but in this case it's a myth. And like Baldwin's David, they're punished for wanting what makes them human. And that's what makes D'Angelo's presence so radical, because he breaks that lineage of shame. Where Achilles hides his softness in war, D'Angelo reveals his in the stillness. He refuses that myth that power must come without vulnerability. And so he makes the desire a little more holy and alive. It's actually a breaking down of that hyper-masculine archetype, that armor that Black men have to be forced to wear for survival. And D'Angelo really strips that away, literally and spiritually, and what's left is sacred. It's not performative strength, not stoicism inherited from trauma, but a return to the body as a temple, not a battleground. And that is the sacred sexuality, that reclamation of desire as a divine testimony. There's a reason that Giovanni's Room opens with confinement, a literal prison cell, the metaphorical closet. David spends a novel bargaining with God and himself, trying to purify something that was never dirty. He calls love an awful mystery because he's never been allowed to experience it without fear. And D'Angelo's Untitled is an answer to that with the body itself, not as a spectacle, but as a resurrection. His video, it is a slow pan across brown skin, the breath, the sweat, the stillness. It's not naughty, it's a reclamation. He becomes the opposite of Baldwin's David, a man unashamed of the physical self, unafraid of being seen, and refusing to apologize for desire. It's not a look at me, it's more of a see me. See what wholeness looks like when you've lived long enough to stop hiding. For those of us over 35 or 40, that is where this meaning, the real meaning of this lives. Because by now, most of us have lived long enough to know what it means to disconnect from our skin, to numb, to overwork, to armor ourselves into a control. And if Baldwin wrote about the terror of embodiment, then D'Angelo wrote about the return of embodiment. How does it feel literally becomes a mantra. Not just between lovers, but between the self and the self. How does it feel to take up space again? To breathe inside your body after years of shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. To let pleasure become presence. That's why D'Angelo's Untitled hits like a gospel in disguise. Because what he's doing in that video, standing unguarded, glorifying the body as something divine, is the sermon Baldwin's David never got to hear. He's preaching embodiment as redemption. He's saying the body isn't where sin lives, it is where salvation, your salvation, begins. So Baldwin's David asks, what kind of life can we have if we cannot be ourselves? And D'Angelo answers wordlessly, this kind where the body isn't a cage, but it is your temple, it is your cathedral, where desire is prayer and where shame dissolves into rhythm. Both men are talking about salvation, one through confession and the other through communion or union with yourself. Both use vulnerability as the instrument, and both remind us that the most radical act of healing is to let yourself be seen, not by the world, but by your own reflection. In Giovanni's room, David's fear destroys what could have saved him. He can't reconcile love with visibility, so he chooses exile. But in Untitled, it gives us the alternate ending that Baldwin never got a chance to write. A black man standing in his full sensual power, turning what was once called obscene into something sacred. And that is what healing looks like after years of self-denial. Especially when you become of a certain age. You need to stop needing to be modest about your wholeness. Stop apologizing for the beauty of being alive in your own body. You start understanding that tenderness is not weakness, but it's proof of life.